Prose from the Underground, coming to you from my basement in northern Michigan, where I read, write, think, and say things, and sometimes I get to talk to someone. Today, I got to talk with the mighty Anne-Marie Oomen, whom I consider a great, true old friend. Her writerly resume is chock full of awards and praise from all corners of the writerly world. If you are a memoirist or creative nonfiction writer and you want to get better, heed her every utterance. If you're a fiction writer, I beg you to get her work and study the way she protracts scene. She does it perfectly, consistently. Today she's going to talk primarily about her latest book, As Long as I Know You, aka the Mom Book, which won the Sue Williams Silverman Award for Creative Nonfiction, which is housed in, supported by AWP. In other words, this is a big one, and I think it's commensurate with her prowess. I hope you enjoy this. I certainly did. Anne-Marie Oomen, please have at it.
Thank you, John, and thanks for having me be part of this. It's a real honor. I'm going to just start off with a couple paragraphs from the first chapter of the new book, As Long as I Know You, the Mom Book, its subtitle. And the first chapter is talk about a transformative moment. It's the death of my father. It's a big, loud, big bang transformative moment. And we were present for that. And this is just the end of the chapter, and it is zeroing in on the moment. It's after his actual passing. The world shifts back. We are half orphaned. Our family stands in a hospital room that is a field of silence, all about her, my mother. She remains now mother, parent, elder, and now widow. She is drive, control, shame, power, mourning, distorted love, all of it. And also, suddenly, I know this more deeply than anything, she is alone. And now an intuition springs from connection that has always been knife sharp between us. Her solitude will be specific, demanding, and mothers should have that. These women who gave us life, who raised us up, who wiped our butts, but hers is beyond me for one simple reason. I have not been a good daughter, and I don't intend to start now. The pattern was set long ago and can't be marred by breath or unbreath, except I know nothing of the work of grief, except I know nothing of her, really, or of myself.
I was fortunate enough to hear you read that full scene not too long ago, before I've had the book in front of me, and I was blown away at something that fiction writers struggle with all the time, and that is how you manage to create a really fully rendered scene. I mean, the scene just goes on and on and on. We don't leave that room. And that is something, as I say, fiction writers got to just hammer themselves constantly to think about. And here you are writing memoir, and that scene is just so fully rendered. I wanted to yell at you about that and ask you more. So let me just ask this question a bit more broadly. Here, this book is chapters. It's all a singular narrative. What force, what element drives your chapters forward? What helps you or prompts you to keep the narrative moving in a particular way?
It goes back to what I started with. It's that for me, it's always looking for the transformative moment, which is the central moment where something shifts. And memory is totally malleable, but we remember certain things or certain scenes, I suspect, because they are part of our mind development in some way. They're part of who we remember them because they're part of the narrative of who we believe we are. And so those little memories that worry us, and if we don't open them up, they just sit there, they're little encapsulated memories. But when you open them up, you realize that so often you remember them because there's a small shift, there's a transformation there, or there's a question that leads to a transformation there in that little memory. And I think for memoirists, that's always kind of what is I'm looking for, to find the central part of the middle, not the middle necessarily, but that's the central part of the chapter, is that shift of altered consciousness is a little cliche, but it's where the emotional and linguistic part of being start to hang together, you know? Yeah.
That's huge. That's huge. So I love this statement, the memories that worry us. And
Yeah,
so you go after them.
I do. Oh my
Pursue.
gosh, yes. I mean, I don't know if you have this thing where you're falling asleep, or maybe you're just waking up and the brain is doing what it does, generating thought, whatever that is.
Right.
And
So
and lots of times those are images of pasts and past things. And I often linger there for a minute and say, okay, what's coming up? Is this something that is this a pattern? Is this something I've seen before? Is this something? And of course, we now know the mirror cells of the brain are remaking our memories all the time. So they're never going to be accurate. But if it keeps coming and it keeps coming back, to me, that's a signal that something is there that wants to be addressed.
mhm.
You
Yes.
know, I don't know if that's the artist impulse or if that's just human nature, but there's something there and I want to go back. And especially if it's a worrisome memory, like that Tara Bray Smith and says in her memoir, West of Then, she says it's like a little broken tooth,
Mm.
that your tongue, and I love that idea, the tongue has to go back and touch again and again. Well, the tongue is language, it's telling. And
Yeah, yeah, great.
yeah.
I'm thinking of what Fleta Brown said recently in her lyrical essay. She's trying to see what reality is there, and for you, what worrisome memory is there, and why it's. I also just suddenly got hit by, for some reason, an old beautiful song by Peter Gabriel, digging in the dirt, trying to find the places where I got hurt. Such a
Oh, beautiful.
yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but
That's
worrisome.
true, because so often those are the digging in the dirt is a past that's buried
Mm.
literally and figuratively. Yeah.
So Anne-Marie Oomen, Fleta Brown, Peter Gabriel, all swimming in the same spot. And you've written so many books, and yet this principle, you think, seems to work consistently for you. If
For
it
me,
yeah.
yeah, I wouldn't say that, although I lots of times teach it, I wouldn't say that every memoirist and nonfiction essayist works this way. But for me, finding that tiny little turn, and sometimes like in the one I just read, it's a big loud turn, but that smaller turn then offers the opportunity, and this is how I kind of go at it. So what came after that was different? That's what I think about first. And then if I've written about, okay, there's the moment, here's what came after, that gives me information then if I'm going to follow any kind of arc that has a drive, something that must have been absent at the beginning that was not in the after. So then, just in terms of construction,
Yeah.
and the opening, the afterword has given me something about what the opening must move toward. And then you can literally think into that moment. And sometimes it's discovered, sometimes it's there, sometimes it's discovered, and sometimes it's something that you realize in the moment that must have been what was driving me. I want to say you make it up. It's not quite like making it up. It's not quite a lie. It's something that had to have been there
Sure.
logically that you've never vocalized before.
Uh,
So that's how the three parts kind of work. But then they can be shifted around. They can be placed as puzzle pieces in different parts,
that's right.
and it just gives you structurally a kind of it gives you parts to work
Yep.
with.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's. I hope that what just happened there in the last minute. I hope that a lot of people take a look at that, because you laid out a really, I think, doable approach to something that can be, overwhelming.
Yeah.
If we
Oh,
start with a worrisome memory, how do you turn that into a thing that you can actually get your writerly hands around and work with? Um, do you have any other briefly any other passages from other projects, other books
oh,
that you can point to as
sure. Pulling down the barn.
oh, of course.
It's the origin memoir. It's the very first one I wrote, and it is much more essay-esque than As Long as I Know You. And it is segmented. Yes, they're chapters, but they're not necessarily related. And this is an early one, and this is one of the first memories where I became aware of this idea of the transformative moment. And not that it was loud, like the big bang of your father dying, but this is a really quiet moment.
Good.
And I'm just going to read two paragraphs. And I'm alone. I'm about 10 years old. I'm in my father's rye field,
Hmm.
and I have an encounter. I don't know how the deer came to be there, but when I see them, everything stops. I stare across the grain at their fine boned heads and slim necks. I see them scent the air above the seed heads, staring back at me with dark eyes. The two does and a beautifully built spike-horn buck seem disembodied, floating. The buck's fine, rough curves down his throat and neck, mixing with the surface of rye as though he grows from it. Some bust lifted from the seed heads, a velvet spiked flower rising from the tips of new grain. All three seem to hover, bodiless, frightening, and godlike. We watch each other. They are still, I am still. The light fills with heat and my own wonder. We are caught in this state of grace until the wind rises. My scent swings toward them. The buck twitches his tail and one ear, throws his head. The deer leap away, white tails pluming as their bodies launch through the haze. The sky turns golden as I watch the empty place they have left in the landscape. I am alone again, but now I feel what alone means.
There it is
Oh,
again. Seen. I mean, you're pointing to this moment, and we don't have the full narrative in front of us, but I know whenever I'm in one of your sort of meditative, intense, fixated moments, I know that I'm going to come away from that with something. In other words, something's going to happen up here after we leave this intense meditative moment. So that always happens and allows you to keep us in place for such a long and intensive time, which is, I think, the why your work is often feels like fiction, in the sense that there's this
thank
really
you.
it's this intense scene. It's the thing that the writers are always trying to do, to immerse the brain in a kind of intensity that is going to stay with you and have meaning, accumulate more meaning as the thing goes
Thank,
on.
thank you. I think the other thing that memoirists are allowed, that fiction writers are not allowed, or at least not to the degree, is that blatant statement of reflection
Yeah.
that, oh, I'm feeling what aloneness means. If I were writing, I suspect, as a fiction writer, I wouldn't be given as much permission to be that direct.
That's right.
No,
Yeah.
memoir reflection is not only forgiven, it's encouraged. It's part of the component of what makes memoir a genre different from fiction. And I think that also, in terms of the scene, then gives you a unconsciously, or maybe more consciously, a direct place to land a scene that may be helpful. I mean, I think that when you're doing life writing or legacy writing, that's a thing that you're allowed, and sometimes even encouraged.
Yeah.
That doesn't always happen in fiction.
So this book comes out technically on September 15th. Can you tell us the publisher?
University of Georgia Press in
Very cool.
Athens, Georgia. I'm so honored to work with this press. They've been amazing. And yeah, it's a real joy. And the official launch is September 15th, but the local Traverse City launch is October 6th at Kirkbride Hall at 5:30, and it's open to the public, and it's a fundraiser for Michigan writers. And so for those people out there who want to support the scholarships that take student developing writers to conferences where they want to go and they need help getting there, this is the program.
Bravo, bravo. We'll all make noise about that, October 6th. Anne-Marie, just one last brief question for you. You have a huge body of work that you've been developing, and I think many people who know you or live around you or have brushed against your career path have a shelf, part of their shelf that has been Oomened. What are you doing? What are you doing now? What's next?
I'm working on an ekphrastic manuscript with Taro Yamasaki, who is a Pulitzer Prize-winning photographer, and we are working on I'm working on ekphrastic responses to his photographs of the crisis that he photographed, the international crisis that he photographed, particularly his Children of War series that he photographed through the 80s and 90s and aughts. And those ekphrastic responses are written in poetry, but then he has graciously been doing interviews with me that offer oral histories. So it's a multi-genre work that I've never tried before, but it's really testing my chops, and it's exciting for that reason. So it's oral history, photography, poetic responses, ekphrastic responses, and it's coalescing in a spiral around, I hope, making some consciousness about trauma and resilience.
Wow. Huge,
so,
huge. When that comes along in the world, I hope you'll come back. If we're still, in Prose from the Underground, you'll come back and we'll make a lot of noise about that.
John, I'm always honored to talk with you. You're inspiring. Yeah, really.
Thank you very much for being here. And we all look forward to getting into the new Anne-Marie memoir. Take care.